Hello, my name's Colin Campbell. I'm with Polygon. We're looking at Layers of Fear. I'm with Jeff Ramos here, and this is a pretty scary game, Jeff. You played it when it was in early access, right?
Yeah, it was great. It popped up on Steam one day. It looked really interesting. The description really pulled me in, and I was totally impressed by it.
What did you like about it most of all?
I think I'm a big fan of the indie horror games on Steam, and there's just something about this that really sets it apart from everything else you've seen on there. With the Five Nights at Freddy's and the sort of games that have popped up around that, around jump scares and things like that. The tropes seem to be pretty straightforward. When you're looking at the Steam description of this game, they bill it as a psychedelic horror game, which is not a term I've seen a lot lately, and just the amount of polish on it also set it apart, and it was something I had to play right away.
Yeah, I played it in a brightly lit room with a bunch of guys, the developers, and I was scared. There were moments where I was jumping in my seat, and there are a few jump scares, but not many of them. Mostly, it's just a disconcerting sense of something not being right, and I think it's very cleverly done. Just to explain to the viewers, what you're seeing here in this room is what was the final section of the early access, which came out last year, and with the full game coming out in very soon, you'll get some extra additional levels, which we hopefully will explore some of those. But the way the game's been redesigned, they've added a story, they've added a bunch of collectibles, they've really fleshed it out in terms of the way that the game looks and the places that you can go. But also, you might see some areas that you saw before the break, so to speak, which have now been put in afterwards. What I like about this also is the environment. They've made, obviously a creepy old house is a trope that we've seen many times before, but they seem to have brought something fresh to it.
Yeah, there's to your point too. There's this overwhelming sense of dread playing the entire game, and sort of even in this clip you can see like your perception of reality starts slowly breaking away. And I think when you play most of these sort of games that are sort of lean on jump scares as their sort of main bill, you're kind of waiting for it to happen, and it's sort of, you get clinched up and you're waiting for the jump scares. And it wasn't like that. I played this game actually in a dark room with four other grown men who are also completely frightened the entire time, and the dread is just totally different because you're not sure what it will even look like or what will happen. And as the main character's sort of mind slips away, the things you see are like these things I haven't seen before, and this is so divorced from what you expect when you were playing the game that I can't imagine like what the character is going through and the way their mind's slipping away, and the narrative supports that too. And it just, you really get wrapped up in it, and that's what really, I think, for us made the game so frightening, is that we were embodying this character and seeing our own sort of perception of what's real and what's not and what's scary morph as the sort of house itself took on its own life.
The game's main protagonist is a painter who has lost his mind. He's grieving loss of his wife, and the setup is that his madness is the thing that is making you scared. You're never quite clear whether you're looking at something that's real or something that's in his head. And what's interesting about this is that every room that you go into, your expectation is always being played with. That the room, you turn your head and the room changes ever so slightly, and just that ever so slightness is the thing that's really quite scary. And although there are like scary things that jump down in front of you every now and again, there's enough of the creepy stuff going on and the psychedelic stuff that you never really know what's going to be coming next. And I think what's interesting about Bluebird, weird name for a games company, they're based in Poland, and I spoke to the developers, and they really love horror. And I think they love all kinds of horror, whether you're talking about gothic 19th century fiction or modern scare movies. And I think that shows in this game, which really uses quite a lot of tricks to make you scared, right?
Yeah, the game to me also, we were talking about it from a game design aspect, my friends and I, it's sort of like each area is a set piece in itself. And, from the part of us that wants to be scared, but also the parts of us that like to be delighted by good design, each time we entered a room, we're like, I wonder what the trick's going to be here, what's going to happen here. And all those little things set up an interesting atmosphere. There's a scene that's, I think, in the early access that you just open a door and there's this painting that almost seems to be following you, and it's not creepy in a traditional sense, but it's unnerving when you see it. And it's sort of, there's a scene where you turn around to the point you were making before, and the door is just ajar enough that you can see the eyes of this painting, and it's just staring back at you, and we're like, oh damn, it's following us again. And those little things are sort of, not in the traditional horror games you're maybe being followed by a creature, but just the creepiness of a painting being in certain spots of the house and at these really tense points also just set up an atmosphere that each room could have contained this painting, or another weird trick of the eye. And I think that sort of plays into this person's madness, is that everything they do, even just turning the corner, could be something different and scary to this person.
Yeah, the paintings are great, aren't they? The house is filled with artwork that is kind of familiar from a history of art, and I think someone somewhere, maybe on the Steam forums, has actually listed the works of art that it's based on, and that adds a kind of a puzzle element to the game, and just a kind of discoverable element of going around and going, oh, I recognise that painting. But also, it's quite creepy that the painting is something that you recognise, that you may have, has been in your life for maybe 20, 30 years, and yet the one that you're looking at is not quite right, and that, I think, is really very clever.
I think that's the entire theme of the game, is things start becoming less right as you go on, and there's so many clever ways to do that without kind of giving it away. But even just the way rooms change, or figuring out how they can change, or things you don't expect change, and that's what's unnerving. I think that's what makes the fear of unknown, like not knowing what's going to happen when you walk into this room, like what part of reality is going to bend or be manipulated in a way to unnerve you. And I think that's what really made the game scary.
Yeah, it's inspired by A Picture of Dorian Gray, which is obviously a creepy story and a morality tale, which obviously adds an extra level of intrigue to the story as a whole. There are some very gamey elements. As you go around the building, you can collect things, you can fill in a sort of family album with photographs and notes, and there's a painting of your wife which you sort of change as you discover more and more of the house. So there's all sorts of like collectibles, and the developers want you to go back and play it again, even though you'll be prepared obviously for some of the jump scares, because each time you play it is slightly different, that your actions have consequences in terms of they change the path of the game. I mean, you've played this already. Do you feel as if it's something that you'll go back and play again? Yeah,
absolutely, especially with those, there's the main part of the story is the sort of collectible element of fleshing out this painting, so to speak. But with new things being in there, that's really interesting to me. And I also sort of do this thing where I like to invite people to play horror games with me, and to see the reactions and see the way they do it. So I'm actually really excited to, travel back to this game with either the same group of friends or just with a new group of friends to see how they react to it. And just as the completionist part of me also wants to see like what those things are, because at least what I've seen from the early access, the things you do collect really color the story a little bit more and really dive deeper into the madness this person's experiencing, because most of the game is fairly non-narrative. It's a lot of elemental sort of storytelling, and so there's a lot of and that's the thing too, we felt like there's maybe corners of the house we missed or things we didn't see before. So with the final version, I want to see every corner of this house and see how it's changed and manipulated, and to see what collectibles I might have missed.
Dolls and doll houses. That's pretty scary stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'm even watching this now, even though I cut the video, I've watched it a couple of times, it's still making me feel a bit creeped out.
Oh yeah, that was not in the early access, the dolls running around. So that's interesting, because I think that part of it too is like the main enemy is or sort of antagonist in the early access version was your mind. So seeing that there's sort of this other entity there can, I kind of don't like what I see right now.
No, do you kind of wish that you like horror? I don't have any sort of intellectual problem with it. It just frightens me too much. Would you play this game on your own in a dark room with some really cool headphones on a big screen?
I'll admit that I don't often play horror games by myself. I like the social experience of being scared with other people, whether it's watching movies or playing games. Even when PT came out, I used to have parties for people to come over who haven't played it. I don't anticipate playing this by myself, especially with this new stuff that I'm seeing. But I'd love to invite other people to play it when I get a little bit too scared for me.
It's interesting. I was talking to the guys, and they said that they'd had quite a few requests for money back on Steam. People just playing the game for a little bit and going, no, this isn't for me, and asking for their money back. So if you like horror games, I suspect you're going to enjoy Layers of Fear. My name's Colin Campbell. Thank you very much, Jeff, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.